Hello everybody and welcome to another amazing video of DIY investing. Today we are going to be talking a little bit about Bitcoin and why I believe the next move coming is where we're going to enter price discovery. Every time we have this happens, it makes the biggest cycle in the altcoins we ever see, the biggest upside potential, the most ROI is made, and I do believe that we're looking at the same similarities playing out once again. Now I wanted to share with you guys one of my favorite altcoins that I think has one of the very best charts in all of the market. We're going to break down what this chart means, why it looks so good, and how we can apply what we're learning today to go look for new altcoins that we can invest in to make more money going over the rest of this cycle. If at any point you find value in this video, please do me a favor, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. Anybody that wants to see how I'm investing my portfolio long term, links are in the description to go ahead and sign up for my VIP. Now guys, when we're jumping into Bitcoin, we don't need to really explain too much. We just saw an even bigger buyback after my video. We saw an even bigger bullish engulfing candle. And in the shorter time frames, we are pulling back just a little bit. When we had such a big move to the upside, we just broke from an important level being this neckline. Don't be surprised, like I talked about, if we ended up coming back down to retest that before we get the next big leg up. You know, this would be the opportunity to get into new positions. Any sort of dip that we're getting here, in my opinion, will most likely be holding, and then we're going to get the next leg up in this cycle. So that's the main thing I'm watching with Bitcoin, knowing that in this next leg up, it's going to be going into price discovery. You don't really want to be fading this breakout. And so if you get a retest back down in here, you know, get the opportunity to accumulate back down, there's going to be a number of alts that are probably down another 10-15% just inside of a small pullback. So if you're looking at the market, to me, I'm still seeing a lot of the same markets breaking out. A lot of them have bounced really hard with Bitcoin breaking out in the shorter time frames. So it is looking like most likely we're going to continue to hold this and then trend back up into new all-time highs. So the big thing I want to talk about here is when this market goes into new all-time highs, what are we looking for in the cycles? What altcoins do we know are good buys? How do we even tell what altcoins are a good buy? And this is why it's really important to understand a few things with market cycles and then just simply having the eye to be able to see bigger trends before they play out. And I wanted to share with you guys one of my favorite altcoins. From a charting perspective, I think that this one has pretty much everything that you would look for. Now this is going to be Telcoin. Telcoin is a project from all the way in the last cycle. I actually got into this thing way back in the very beginning, all the way back down in this level. And it ended up pumping so hard. I think it did like 1000x from where I bought it at. So this was probably my best investment in the last cycle, I would say. Although I sold it way too early, I didn't even hold it all the way up there. It would have been my best investment, maybe along the lines of Solana. But Telcoin and Solana were the two cryptos that I bought really early that I sold too early, and I didn't allow it to run in the same ways that I let my Terra Luna or my Phantom positions run. So with this cycle, I wanted to take the time to break things down. I wanted to explain some things with the market cycles, how to play them, how to, you know, actually spot what looks good and what doesn't, because this is the important time of the cycle, whereas we're seeing Bitcoin now making the next move into price discovery. It does look like this is a retest. We're going to be looking at the rest of these other altcoin markets exploding as a whole. So we now need to know what to look for in the market. You know, how do we tell if a cycle looks good? Which ones are going to give us the biggest ROI? And one of my favorite ways to tell if you're a new guy coming into the market that maybe doesn't have as much experience, you don't know as much about the fundamentals of different projects, you don't know how to research them on Twitter and things like that. One of my favorite things to do is just simply look at the market cycles, because there's going to be OG altcoins from prior cycles. This one obviously went through a prior cycle and had this big correction back down. A lot of these are going to still go into new all-time highs. And I think that a lot of people are shaken out by older altcoins that have had these prior cycles because they assume, based off of the last bull run, because so many altcoins from 2017 didn't really go into a big new all-time high like many of the newer coins did, they just assume that, you know, by default, that's what's going to continue to happen. The problem is that's not what's going to continue to happen. This cycle is much more, you know, this cycle is going to be bigger in every sort of way. We have way more money. We have way more on-ramps. Retail is going to finally get a hold of this cycle like they didn't in the last one. And so I really believe that, you know, what we're looking at here is a difference. We're going to see a lot of these altcoins that have had prior cycles go into brand new all-time highs. And this, you know, you're going to come to find out was just the very beginning cycle to start, you know, a much bigger trend. So when I'm looking at Telcoin, there's a few things that I really like to look at when it comes to analyzing a cycle low. Now, you guys know one of my favorite patterns to follow is Wyckoff. And for you guys that don't know what Wyckoff is, I'll grab a chart to share with you. So if you guys remember, this was the schematic that we were looking at, and there's a few different versions of a Wyckoff schematic, and they're all going to vary to their own sort of degree. You know, this one's going to vary in the way that this top part that we made, once we kind of bottomed, we made these two lows, very similar to the price action that we see here. The only difference was instead of us holding and making kind of a lower high like this one did, we ended up making a short-term higher high. And so this one came up like this before then coming back down and finishing out this spring. Because we still ended up going for that lower low. We still made these 3 lower lows. The only difference was we made this attempt at a breakout that got stuffed before we ended up making that final capitulation. So one of my favorite things to look for in the markets are just analyzing these basic Wyckoffs, because every single cycle, if we're looking at the altcoin total market cap, they've all followed some degree or variance of a Wyckoff accumulation. And we've talked a lot about that. Remove some drawing tools and we can see that this is how all of our consolidations have worked. These same type of moves, this Wyckoff accumulation. This is a little bit of a different version of a Wyckoff because we didn't make a third lower low. We held support in the mid-range. I can't remember exactly what this one would be. I think it's a Wyckoff schematic number 2. But regardless, this is a Wyckoff. If we come back and look at the bottom of the last cycle, this was also a Wyckoff. And this was the final spring. The COVID capitulation was that final lower low. Even all the way back into this cycle, we followed another example of this. Low, low, spring, and then you get the reversal. So every one of these cycles we followed some type of, pattern that resembles a Wyckoff, whether it's a schematic 1, a schematic 2, or a variance of that. I would say that this example of Telcoin is almost a little bit unique in the way that it actually broke a little bit higher. But nonetheless, guys, it's all the same similarities and setups, and I want you guys to be aware of these because when we're looking at the bottom of a cycle, many of these altcoins are going to do a Wyckoff accumulation. Another example of this is going to be volume, obviously. If we notice, after we made this sort of third lower low, what we look to be completing of this Wyckoff, we made this big breakout, ran all the way back up to this range high, and then we had this pullback. Notice how we had all of this major sell volume that came in here. This is basically as much sell volume that existed at the very cycle top. So having that happen, and yet we still maintain a higher high, that really is what cemented us in that the trend has shifted, right? We went through the Wyckoff, which generally you would expect that the Wyckoff would reverse after this point, which is exactly what we did. We had a breakout in price. We followed your conventional Elliott wave cycle up, 1, 2, 3, 4 with an extended wave 5. And then all this dump back down to support was just your standard ABC correction. Yeah, we came all the way back down. Technically, we made a new low, but we closed all the way back above, so it was a higher high. Anytime you're starting a new cycle and you have this type of volume and a capitulation, whether it's at the very bottom of the capitulation, we had very little volume in this period. The volatility was pretty much gone in this final little shakeout here. The real capitulation volume came at the ending of this correction when whoever the hell capitulated did right here. That is a line that lines up perfectly with the market cycle. Somewhere in the bottom, you want to see some type of capitulation volume, whether it happens at the very tail end or whether it happens shortly after. The volume really does dictate a lot of what we're going to expect to see in the new market. And we can see shortly after we got our next breakout, and this is arguably the most important one because all we did recently was break out of our bottom formation, even break out above the prior high that we just made, and we just retested that as new support and we're holding above. So when we're looking, everything we need to see for a bottom formation is played out. Not only have we broken back above and made our first higher high, but we saw capitulation volume. At the very end of the trend, there was almost no volume. The volatility was completely dead. And I can almost guarantee we also saw some major bullish divergence that formed in here. So I'm on a 3-day time frame. That's a fairly decent time frame. And we've had bullish divergence. I mean, realistically, this was still a higher high. All of these 3 lower lows all the way throughout this period ended up being bullish divergence. So generally at the very bottom of the trend, you're going to see all of these factors kind of combined. We can see on the weekly RSI, we've pretty much been holding bullish divergence since all the way back at the very same point. But this is the weekly, right? So we've been holding this trend, breaking out, making higher highs. Anytime you're seeing that amount of bullish divergence that's taking place, it's always a signal that the longer term correction is over, that we're about to reverse that. So we see a combination of a Wyckoff accumulation taking place in here. On top of the Wyckoff accumulation, we also ended up seeing the bullish divergence. We saw capitulation volume. There's multiple different things that we're looking at inside of this cycle that is telling us that we have reversed. The big thing I want you guys to remember is as we're getting out here to a weekly time frame, the most important level on this chart is the level that we just flipped, being the bottom formation, right? If we're looking at this has been the bottom formation that we've been in for a number of days. Probably at least 500 days, I would imagine, from right here. Yeah, so about 600 days that we spent from the very bottom. From peak to peak, we're looking at about 500. From the point before we broke out, we're at about 600. So we're currently sitting right above that support. That means we have confirmed a breakout above our bottom formation, this big Wyckoff accumulation. And now we're already starting to get continuation out of that. So when I'm zooming out and I'm seeing a lot of cycles that look like this, where they have such massive moves to come before they even hit their prior all-time highs, there's a lot of upside potential in these altcoins. And that's why I wanted to talk about Telcoin, because I'm still just holding it. You know, we accumulated more in my group at the bottom of this cycle, somewhere around 0015 or 16. I can't remember exactly where it was at, and we ended up even going back down lower than where we bought into on this lower low. But we got in somewhere over here once this trend began to start. So we're up a little bit in profit, but I'm not really up all that much. I think I'm only up about 100%, about doubled my money so far, and there's still way more upside potential still to come. And so I didn't feel bad necessarily about talking about this one. I won't talk about coins if I've already gotten into them super early and then they've started pumping. I'm not going to come up here and chill into you guys. I only try and give you guys opportunities that I think will make you money, and this is one that just confirmed a breakout, so I have a lot of confidence that it's going to go higher. The big thing that we're looking at when we're seeing these new altcoins starting their bull trends is where they're going to go to in their starting level. So the most important level that I see coming up for us as far as resistance goes is going to be right up here, because if we look all the way back at the beginning of Telcoin, this is where we got added to exchanges, made our listing dump, and then when we started breaking out, it was really once we got above this level here that we saw the euphoric blow off top. All straight green candles all the way up, made an absolutely massive blow off top. So in the same way that when we topped, we came right back down to retest that level. Here, we were consolidating it on it, making lower highs in this kind of triangle, a bearish triangle, I guess you could say, before we ended up breaking down. And then once we broke down, we can see us reacting here, rejection, rejection, and then we fell lower. So I think that that's the most important level to get above. And in the next move, we're either going to run up to that level and then pull back a little bit before getting continuation back up. Regardless of how it happens, once we get above this level right here, once we can make that support and resistance flip above 0.0099, that's the point where I think that we're about to see a much bigger move all the way up to about 3 cents. That would be the next level. We're looking at a much bigger impulse setting in if we can get back above these key levels. The most important one is going to be the 1 cent region, and then we can come all the way up to the 3 cent region once we get above that one. But when we're looking at targets here, from where we're at right now to the 1 cent region, you're looking at a 1.5x, and all the way up here to the 3 cent target, you're looking at like a 6.5x. So in something that has already had a prior cycle, that's pretty good. And I think that we're at the stages of actually doing this very soon. The next part of the cycle is where you see a lot of altcoins make their first higher highs and higher lows in the same way that Telcoin kind of did in the last cycle. Notice how once we started breaking out, it was just these quick impulses, higher highs, higher lows. And then, you know, we saw a much bigger move set in. We're going to be at those stages right now. All of these altcoins are going to be breaking back above these prior resistance levels. And for me, once we get above this 10 cent or 1 cent region, that's where we're going to make a very thunderous move all the way up to this level being 3 cents. And then, you know, if we get a pullback from here, I'm still anticipating that these things are just going to do more of this. Telcoin is one that is very, very bullish. And I think that even though it has a prior cycle, there's enough new volume coming in, and this cycle is going to be unique. I've told you guys that constantly. We have way more money opportunity than ever before. There's thousands of chains this cycle versus in 2017 we had Ethereum, and then through Ethereum we got all of the ICOs, all of the ERC20 explosions, altcoin insanity more or less. If you were around there, you know. If you weren't, you know, the last cycle was small. That's the only way I can explain it. Altcoins did not do hardly anything. And even though we made a lot of profit on some of these altcoins, like they did do a lot, in comparison to 2017, it was really small. And I think that this is the cycle where we're going to see a lot of those same similarities in size as what we saw in 2017, except the difference is instead of us having Ethereum and then one ecosystem for altcoins, we have thousands of these new ecosystems. Realistically, we probably have like 50 solid ones. And then through those, there's going to be thousands of new altcoins that are created. So the opportunity for upside is just going to be like 2017. And seeing all of these altcoins that are now flipping their major bear market bottoms, and they're just starting that next stage up into a big move, we're going to see a lot of quick impulses. As Bitcoin's just flipping these prior all-time highs, we're going to be at that point where Bitcoin is going into price discovery, and every time Bitcoin makes that first leg into price discovery, that's always right when the altcoins start to do really, really well. You know, in the last cycle, Bitcoin was like right up here at about 30K. It had already made a pretty sizable move into new all-time highs before the altcoins ever started to run. But it was in that first leg up that the altcoin profit really set in, and a lot of the biggest gains were made. You know, once Bitcoin started to sell off up in here, a lot of those altcoins were really breaking out and making big moves. So we got to expect that as Bitcoin's just flipping these prior all-time highs, that first leg up, you know, it might take a little bit. We might get a few green candles in here initially, like what we saw over here, but once we get up here to about that 85, I'd just say about 80 to 100K, 80, 90K, somewhere around there, that's where we're most likely going to start to see a lot of altcoins set in a big way. And the truth of altcoins is this, guys, they don't take very long to just start breaking out. We can see what happened with Telcoin in the last cycle, and we're sitting around those same levels. Once again, we almost fully retraced that rally. So that's why I think that the opportunity is big. All of the hype has been retraced. Everybody's been shaken out, all of the weak hands. Now there's new volume entering the market. We're just breaking out of these bear market lows. And this is a crypto that's pretty much available on a lot of different exchanges. So I just think that, you know, if you do want to look at something that has prior cycles, these are the things you want to look at. Even if you don't buy Telcoin, you want to be looking for these altcoins that are just now flipping their bear market bottoms, right? The ones that have broken out and are retesting them as new support, those are the ones that are going to be getting ready for their big moves into, you know, not quite new all-time highs yet, but it won't be very far behind until they do. You know, another example of a coin that's done this recently that we've talked a lot about is Dogecoin. Dogecoin's pretty much at that exact same point as Telcoin, where all we've done is pretty much just flip this bear market bottom, and we're just consolidating back down on it as new support. We're going to see all of these markets reverse at the exact same time, and certain ones will outperform more than others. The reason I like Telcoin is for the average person, there's still a lot of upside potential. I mean, just to the all-time highs from where we're at right now, you're looking at like a 15x move. So that's really solid in an altcoin. It only has a little over $100 million total market cap. So for us to go to a 10x, we'd only be at $1 billion in market cap. That's not that crazy of a valuation. And you know, if we were to see maybe 100x from where we're at today, what would the price have to be and how high would we have to go? This would be pretty crazy to see 100x. It would be a little bit less likely, I would say, but it's not impossible. 40 cents. You know, when we zoom out here and we take a look from the long-term basis, a lot of these cycles that actually do go into a new all-time high that make a brand new sort of impulse, they really do dwarf their prior cycles to this extent. Now, a lot of people are going to fight me with that and say, no, it's had a prior cycle. There's no way that it's going to pump that hard. But I'm telling you guys that this cycle will be different. I saw a lot of altcoins from 2017 that had these prior bear markets just go into even bigger new all-time highs. And I'm not saying it's going to 100x from right here, but from where we were accumulating at the fairly low to the cycle bottom, I think it very easily could. And I still think it can easily 100x from this point as well. But you'd be looking at a much bigger valuation, you know, tens of billions of dollars in valuation, which isn't impossible given a true super cycle, given an altcoin cycle with the Bitcoin ETF and many altcoins getting ETF approvals. You know, we will see that type of upside potential in a lot of these cryptos. Now, I'm just saying that it gets a little bit less likely when we're looking at something going up all the way, you know, into this big of a new all-time high, because chances are I'd end up selling it a little bit earlier than that. But the thing is, guys, all of these end up doing this to some extent, you know. This thing made a pretty big new all-time high past that point. They always end up dwarfing their prior cycles. So even if we only hit like 15 to 20 cents, you know, you're still looking at a very big profit in a crypto that is basically available everywhere. A lot of people have access to it. And it follows all of the classic things that I would be looking for as far as charting principles. You know, looking at your average sort of market cycle, big ABC correction back down. Once we completed wave C, we started to get the first higher highs. Now that we've broken out of this bear market bottom, this is pretty much the last moment that we have before we start that next major move. And I really think that we're headed, you know, pretty much straight to that 1 cent region, but chances are we're going to be going into a much bigger move all the way to 3 cents as well. So even if you only bought it for a short-term hold, 2.5x to 6.5x is still pretty good, is still really good gains, assuming that we only have to hold it for a fairly short amount of time. Like I said, guys, I really think that the next impulses coming are going to be really quick, and they're not going to take very much time. So we don't have all that much time to get into these altcoins. Noticing how some of these are already at that point of reversing, you know, I think that we're pretty much at that shifting point. Noticing how Bitcoin's at this all-time high, getting ready to go into new all-time highs. There's a lot of variables lining up that are showing that we're about to start the next big altcoin run in this cycle. So I wanted to break down my favorite one that I'm currently looking at right now, give you guys an option that actually you could check out if you're interested in it. Do some research. I think it's a great chart, a great setup that could provide profit. Obviously, it's not financial advice, but this is something I'm actually holding and posted a signal in my group. So I'm going to see what happens, hold it for the rest of the cycle. Anyways, guys, if you did find value in this video, please do me a favor, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these videos. For anybody that wants to see how I'm investing, where we end up following any of these picks, like I said, guys, this was a signal we followed in my Discord server, and you'd be up about double before we make this big breakout. So if you guys want to follow along with any altcoins we're buying, selling, trading over the cycle, links are in the description to go ahead and sign up on my website. With that being said, thank you so much for tuning in. I will catch you guys in the next one. As always, peace out.